title and therefore cannot be found on public records. Benefits to the real estate community. You can now sell to 9 out of 10 buyers. I say 10 out of 10 buyers. Now, these are the ones that have a down payment, have a desire to buy a home, and have the capacity to make a payment. There's no reason why you couldn't sell to 10 out of 10 instead of 2 out of 10. Faster closings, all cash offers, be the best in the pack. Bring something different to the banks to get REO properties. Hey, where would you like to list your house? With ABC Realty, who can sell to 2 out of 10 people, or with me, who can sell to 10 out of 10 people? Or for you, I don't sell real estate. I'm a certified mortgage planner. I don't compete with my with the real estate community, but the idea is there. No mortgage problems, more closings, full commissions for the selling agent. There's going to be franchise and co-op opportunities sometime in the future, but no need for one now. Full commissions for the listing agent. Investors Ally is not about digging into the pockets of the real estate community. They're about improving the real estate community by providing this new option for people to be able to buy homes. More options to help your clients and more referrals. Now, licensed real estate agents can also invite real estate investors to invest in FARJHO structures. Check this out. Watch this real carefully. This is real important. You can bring aspiring homeowners to FARJHO, to Investors Ally, to be linked up with joint property investors, but you could also bring joint property investors to Investors Ally to be linked up with other joint property investors and ultimately linked up with aspiring homeowners. Licensed real estate agents will receive their joint property investors' proportionate portion of the buy-side commission every time their JPI invests in the FARJHO structure. This could be huge, little bits at a time, creating residual income. Some investors will want to buy investment properties traditionally. Yeah, that'll never change. Investors who want to take the full risk, buy a house that's distressed, fix it up, flip it, or rent it, they get 100% of the profit, 100% of the depreciation, 100% of the appreciation, but they also take 100% of the risk. That's true. Those people are not going to change, and you can still help them. But for every $1 million you find of that kind of money, you will find $50 million of people who don't want to take that risk. Infinitely more people will want to buy through FARJHO for the benefits of real estate without the normal risks and costs involved. Cost savings for your client include no property management, fees, lender costs, vacancy, carrying costs, repairs, loan costs, dishwashers, all kinds of things. So, I mean, a lot of people think real estate investing is got this massive, massive return on investment. When you start taking out all the costs associated with real estate investing, it's not as good as what people think. It's still great. Real estate, in my opinion, is probably the best investment out there. But the reality is it's not as good as what some people think, and it's often very risky. Self-directed IRAs or 401ks can invest directly with FARJHO little bits at a time. Little bits at a time. When somebody has $25,000 they want to invest into their 401k, they can do so through a Roth 401 or a self-directed 401k or IRA into real estate through FARJHO shares, little bits at a time. Institutional investors possibly too. If you were responsible for bringing in an institutional investor, maybe a pension plan or a hedge fund or money market account manager, then every time they invest in FARJHO structures, you would also receive the proportionate portion of the buy-side commission that you were responsible for. Benefits to our country. Provides the first online exchange for residential real estate fractional interest available to professionals, institutions, and private real estate investors. The only way to deleverage America. I don't know any other way to deleverage America. This country, the leaders in this country has already created the exact same machine that recently in 2008 exploded and erupted in sparks and flames and smoke. They've created the very exact same machine. They've rebuilt it from the bottom up to start this process all over again. It takes control away from the banks completely. We can change America with a new way to finance residential properties with equity financing instead of debt financing. Everyday citizens get to make the long-term money instead of banks. Guys, banks make money on margins. Very little margins on lots of money. 2, 3, 4% margin on billions of dollars. That's where banks make money. You can make that money. Everyday citizens can make that money instead of the banks. Eliminates any possibility of this mess happening again because it eliminates debt. Keeps people in their homes with options. Protects against overinflated real estate value. Bubbles. In other words, bubbles are created by loose debt. That's going to happen again with the machine that's being rebuilt right now. Benefits for everyone. Let's just say if Maxwell, somebody always asks me, Steve, what about if values go down again? This sounds great if values are going up, but what if values go down again? Okay. Well, if Maxwell would have purchased his home in 2006 in a FARJHO structure at $600,000, what would have happened to he and his investors? Well, after or during the crash or the Great Correction, the LLC members would have had to have a meeting to discuss the problem. What's the problem? The problem is the company is losing money. How's that? Because the company's only asset has dropped in value. It would be common sense and in the best interest of the company to A, devalue the company, and B, lower the rent for the tenant partial homeowner, which is one of your members. Once the company has been devalued, all members would have lost equity, not just one, and it's a capital gains loss is treated very differently than a homeowner loss with regards to taxes, and it's something that will come back with no out-of-pocket expenses. In a traditional transaction, however, the homeowner or investor is burdened with a $500,000 mortgage against a property worth $300,000 or less. And boy, those banks are so interested and willing to help us with negotiating a loan modification on an investment property. Based on the new value, all members will still be receiving their return on investment. No tenant would walk away from their home. There would be no foreclosure because there's no mortgage and no need to bail out the banks or even ask for a loan modification. Benefits to the homeowner and the investor. If the real estate you purchased in 2000 to 2007 were actually in FARJHO shares, you would be still earning return on investment. You would have lost nothing except for tax-deductible interest loss, equity that will come back with little or no out-of-pocket expenses along the way. Your investments would still be whole. You would not have any property, or you would not have lost any property. You would not have lost any money, really. Your income would have decreased, but you would have not lost any properties, and your future values would be intact. In fact, you'd be buying more FARJHO shares again today. And if your primary residence was in a FARJHO structure, your monthly payment would have dropped significantly without the need of a loan modification. I woke up with a cold sweat one night, 2 o'clock in the morning, called Ralph, when I realized that, geez, my life would have been very different had my properties been in FARJHO shares. In June of 2006, I was making $10,000 a month net from my real estate empire, and in June of 2008, I was losing $20,000 a month net. Had everything been in FARJHO shares, I would have gone from $10,000 a month net to about $4,000 a month net, but guess what? That's still a positive number. I wouldn't have lost any shares or any properties. If you owned your own home in a FARJHO structure and you only own 20% of it, instead of paying down principal in the traditional purchase with a mortgage in an attempt to pay off your home so you own it free and clear, you might buy shares of other FARJHO structures, but maybe not in your own hometown, maybe in Santa Barbara or Coronado Island or New York City, Fort Walton Beach, Florida, Orlando, Florida, or wherever else real estate is expected to appreciate the most. Or maybe your investment goals are to be less volatile, and you're going to buy in areas that are less volatile. Instead of buying shares of your own home, you buy shares of homes in better places one at a time. You would collect rent from those shares, which would pay your rent. What if the tenant partial homeowner loses his job and can't make the payment? Somebody always asks this. This is beautiful. They don't get foreclosed on. Again, mortgage term. They don't get evicted. They're one of their own landlords. They don't even get nasty letters from their landlords. They start losing shares. They have months, possibly years, to get back on their feet and start making their payments again. Once they can make their payments again, they don't have to make up the back rent. They can if they want to, but they don't have to. All investors continue to get their return on investment, but instead of cash infusion, they're getting share growth. Now, once the tenant partial homeowner can start making their payments, instead of a 20% ownership, maybe they only have 15% ownership. So all the investors continue to receive their return on investment, and the tenant partial homeowner is safe in their house and they don't have to leave. What if the tenant partial homeowner never makes another payment? Well, they use up their shares paying rent. They can't lose anything because they use it paying rent. Once the tenant is no longer a member, then he or she could and likely would be evicted if they didn't make any payments. But then the remaining investors go back to InvestorsAlly and list the house for sale with the FARJHO structure in hopes of being matched up with a new tenant partial homeowner, but now they might be selling at a higher price or maybe a higher rate of return because of appreciation. Or they simply sell the house, get their profits, and match up with another aspiring homeowner. They've already got the group together. They match up with another aspiring homeowner through InvestorsAlly and buy another home in cash. First year is always the best. anyways for an investor. So here's a little lifespan of my little stick friend Max, Maxwell Smart. He buys his home, or buys 10% of the FARJHO structure that owns his home. Then he buys 10% of 15 other similarly priced FARJHO structures over the next 10 years. His rent ROI coming in now, he's got rent coming in, rental income. He's become an investor of $1,800 per month. His net worth is $450,000. His own rent hasn't gone up in 10 years. It's still $1,723. That cannot go up. He owns 100% uses and enjoyment of his home. Heck, his neighbors don't care how he financed the property. Max has income now in excess of his rent payments, and therefore he has no payment. His housing is now free and clear, and he's sharing the risk with other investors who are all making money. Max wonders why anyone would ever want to take 100% of the risk again. Max has great tax deductions through each of the properties he's a joint property investor in. He also has great appreciation possibilities with far less risk. Years later, he has 10% ownership in 50 different properties. He has $7,500 a month coming in with a net worth of over $6 million. He's the $6 million man. After he pays his rent of $1,723, he still has $5,773 for additional retirement residual income. He has very little risk, doesn't fear big expenses coming from any of his properties going vacant. He doesn't even worry about major repair bills. He hasn't had the typical problems associated with vacancies or destructive tenants. He has no management company taking 10 to 20% of his profits. Years later, he'll turn over his business to his children, and they won't even need to know how to run it. It's beautiful. Max doesn't owe any bank even one dime. In fact, if you really think about it, what has Max become? Max has become the bank, the first Maxwell Smart Bank of any town USA. Benefits to the American pension plans and institutional investors in the United States in general. Residential real estate is the largest asset class in the world. Yet, residential real estate is not an investable asset class for institutional investors like pension plans, mutual funds, hedge funds, etc. Let's take pension funds for an example. Pension fund managers currently allocate their assets into investable asset classes, some to stocks, some to bonds, some to mutual funds, some to commercial syndications, TICs and REITs, etc. But there's never been an investable asset class for residential real estate, yet residential real estate is the largest asset class in the world. FARJHO and swap rent changes that forever. Soon, institutional lenders and pension funds, as well as joint property investors, private real estate investors, private individuals, will be able to allocate some of their funds to residential real estate safely. Self-fulfilling prophecy. If the Riverside County Pension Fund, for example, were to be an investor in FARJHO structures, it would result in a self-fulfilling prophecy. More homeowners able to buy, 10 out of 10 instead of 2 out of 10, means more homes will be purchased. More homes being purchased will result in more homes being built. More homes being built and purchased will result in more jobs. More jobs will result in more homes being purchased. More homes being purchased will result in higher prices, a respectable appreciation. Higher prices means the pension funds will benefit long-term and the money isn't being lent out or borrowed. More jobs and more homeowners will result in more taxes, income taxes for local governments, and more property taxes paid to Riverside County, which would result in more investment into helping more people buy homes instead of the wasted money, taxpayer money, and the money-losing idea of first-time homebuyer down payment assistance programs, which does nothing more than park $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 for 20 years or 15 years or 30 years with no hopes of getting any return on investment for the taxpayers. Things to think about. J. Paul Getty, at one time, the richest man that ever walked the North American continent, said it best. He said, "I'd rather have 1% of 100 men rather than 100% of my own." What did he mean? Well, wouldn't you rather have 1% of 100 FARJHO structures rather than 100% of one? You have 100%, yet you only have 1% risk. Thomas Jefferson said this in 1802. I can't believe he said this in 1802. "I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and the corporations that will grow up around the banks will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the very continent that their fathers conquered." it's very important you understand that this presentation has just scratched the surface of the revolutionary products I believe that FARJHO and SwapRent are. You need to study more. Those are the websites again. We are in preparation for launch. Millions of dollars and 10 years have gone into the preparation for this launch. Victor Hugo said, nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come. It's soon time for this launch. Worldwide patents are pending. The best financial minds in our country have been studying these concepts even outside the country. You can become